My work in the Crimea. I hope the reader will give me credit for the assertion I'm about to make, namely, that I enter upon the particulars of this chapter with great reluctance, but I cannot omit them for the simple reason that they strengthen my one and only claim to the interest of the public, namely, my services to the brave British men in the Crimea. But fortunately, I can follow a course which will not only render it unnecessary for me to sound my own trumpet, but will be more satisfactory to the reader. I can put on record the written opinions of those who had ample means of judging and ascertaining how I fulfilled the great object which I had in view in leaving England for the Crimea. And before I do so, I must solicit my reader's attention to the position I held in the camp as doctress, nurse, and mother. That the officers were glad of me as a doctress and nurse may be easily understood. When a poor fellow lay sickening in his cheerless hut and sent down to me, he knew very well that I should not ride up in answer to his message empty-handed. When we lie ill at home, surrounded with comfort, we never think of feeling any special gratitude for the sick-room delicacies which we accept as consequence of our illness. But the poor officer, lying ill and weary in his crazy hut, dependent for the merest necessities of existence upon a clumsy, ignorant soldier cook, who would almost prefer eating his meat raw to having the trouble of cooking it. Our English soldiers are bad campaigners. Often finds his greatest trouble in the want of those delicacies with which a weak stomach must be humored into retaining nourishment. How often have I felt sad at the sight of poor lads who, in England, thought attending early parade a hardship, and felt harassed if neckcloths set awry or the natty little boots would not retain their polish, bearing so nobly and bravely trials and hardships to which the veteran campaigner frequently succumbed. Don't you think, reader, if you were lying with parched lips and fading appetite, thousands of miles from mother, wife, and sister, loathing the rough food by your side, and thinking regretfully of that English home where nothing that could minister to your great need would be left untried, don't you think that you would welcome the familiar figure of the stout lady whose bony horse had just pulled up at the door of your hut, and whose panniers contain some cooling drink, a little broth, some homely cake, or a dish of jelly or blancmange? Don't you think, under such circumstances, that you would heartily agree with my friend Punch's remark? That berry brown face with a kind heart's trace, impressed on each wrinkled sly, was a sight to behold through the snow clouds rolled across that iron sky. Then, their calling me mother was not, I think, altogether unseemly. I used to fancy that there was something homely in the word. And, reader, you cannot think how dear to them was the smallest thing that reminded them of home. Some of my Crimean patients who were glad of me as a nurse and doctress bore names familiar to all England, and perhaps, did I ask, they would allow me to publish those names. I am proud to think that a gallant sailor, on whose brave breast the Order of Victoria rests, a more gallant man can never wear it, sent for the doctress whom he had known in Kingston, when his arm, wounded on the fatal 18th of June, refused to heal, and I think that the application I recommended did it good. In the second volume of Russell's Letters from the Seat of War, page 187, is the following entry. In the hour of their illness, these men, Army Works Corps, in common with many others, have found a kind and successful physician. Close to the railway, halfway between the Col de Balaclava and Kandekoy, Mrs. Seacole, formerly of Kingston and of several other parts of the world, such as Panama and Chagres, has pitched her abode, an iron storehouse with wooden sheds and outlying tributaries. And here she doctors and cures all manner of men with extraordinary success. She is always in attendance near the battlefield to aid the wounded and has earned many a poor fellow's blessings. Yes, I cannot, referring to that time, conscientiously charge myself for doing less for the men who had only thanks to give me than for the officers whose gratitude gave me the necessaries of life. I think I was ever ready to turn from the latter to help the former, humble as they might be. And they were grateful in their way, and as far as they could be. They would buy me apples and other fruits at Balaclava and leave them at my store. One made me promise, when I returned home, to send word to his Irish mother, who was to send me a cow in token of her gratitude for the help I had been to her son. I have a book filled with hundreds of the names of those who came to me for medicines and other aids, and never a train of sick or wounded men from the front passed the British Hotel, but its hostess was awaiting them to offer comforts to the poor fellows for whose suffering her heart bled.